You're counting down now.
Great. 5, 4, 3, 2.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6.
Hey!
Hello! We're recording now.
And welcome to the What podcast as my iPad goes out. Welcome.
I hit it earlier, folks. You didn't see it because we
Sure.
restarted, so I had to do it this time. Is that a clean elbow?
I don't know. I hope not. I hope you have the corona now.
Well, you know what that means? If I do, that means you did too. So thanks. Thanks. I feel like Ashby brings out the best in us.
I can't do this.
And the worst all at the same time.
Wow.
How are you doing, folks?
Welcome to the What podcast. Eric, Creech, Kyle, Whitley, and joining us today, we have a very special guest. Ashby Brame is joining us. Woo! This is where if I had like the super editing skills, I could put some applause in the back.
I can do that.
I can do that too. I think I did it for an earlier episode.
Or we could have just applauded and screamed and been real
Woo! Like that. So,
Yep.
And if you're still listening to this, a minute and a half in, thanks because we didn't scare you off. So yeah, how are y'all doing?
I'm doing grand.
Doing good.
Wonderful.
Doing good.
Ashby, you have anything you want to plug? What brought you to the table here? I want to hear. I know the story, but how did you, from your point of view, like why are you sitting at this table for this podcast?
I think that what people need to know is that I went to high school with you guys. It's pretty important.
We have to slide it into your mic a little bit.
And-
Or slide it into you, whichever. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, it's
I want
fine.
to make sure.
What a jerk.
It heard.
Ignore him.
Now I know
Keep
how
talking.
Eric feels
Exactly.
all the time.
All the time.
There you go.
No, I went to high school with you guys, and I still live in the area. I moved back a few years ago, and I work in tourism for Johnston County. So I convince people to come to Johnston County and vacation when there's not a global pandemic happening. And I think I just started trash talking you guys on Twitter.
Somebody had to.
Someone had to.
Yeah.
Were you the one who gave us the 5-star review, the terrible comment, or
Maybe.
okay?
That might have been me, anonymous.
Well, at least you listened. That was great.
I don't know how I found out about the podcast. I guess I just saw it on y'all's social media and was like, I'm going to start listening to this, and then started listening, and then started trash talking you on social media.
We appreciate the trash talk.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We can take it.
Yeah, and using your podcast to trash talk Hunter Batten, which is even
greater. Yes.
I think that'll be an episode. Like our anniversary, we'll put Hunter at the other end of the table.
Yes, and just let y'all trash talk each other. And it's like watching a great tennis match.
Oh man, welcome to Chelsea's entire life.
Yes.
Well, to make her feel special, we'll bring Chelsea too.
Oh
She can
my
sit on the
gosh,
other
she can
side.
moderate.
Yeah.
This is a big enough table. I don't know if it's a big enough room, but we'll figure
Hopefully
it
by
out.
then you'll
Maybe
be
then I'll
set
have
in your
mine.
house.
Yeah, mine will be ready at that point. So maybe.
We were talking about you at work the other day. I don't remember what brought you up.
Were
Oh
we?
no.
It was.
I wasn't there. I don't work with you, so
It was good. We were talking about that like middle school sports and like soccer and
yeah,
how your dad
okay.
would stand by the goal and like yell and
Yep.
I had no clue what I was doing.
Yeah,
So it's
and
like,
he wasn't just yelling at me.
No,
he was yelling at everybody.
He would yell at every single guy,
everybody.
whether it was his or not, 100%.
well, it didn't bother me because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
What do you mean, boot it?
I'm just here to run so I can be in better shape when basketball starts.
I remember playing for Ryan Bessessi's dad, like rec soccer, and I remember him yelling, "Boot it!" And I'm like, "What do you mean, boot it?" Like I'd go up there, had a free kick, and I'd go there and just tap the ball. And he's like, "No, boot it!" I'm like, "No, what do you mean? I'm 7."
Do you mean kick it?
Because I can kick really good. Watch.
Was that Ron Bessessi or Ron Fitzgerald?
Ryan Bessessi. Fitzgerald was still in Canada when I was 7.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, but he did play soccer.
Yes, but that's like a national sport up there.
We
Yeah.
took his dad Ken on a trip. We played well, I guess it's like a week long. It wasn't just a concert. It was a big show in Illinois, and we took his dad with us
Nice.
because his dad wouldn't let Ryan come unless he could come with him. And so they went from there to Canada after.
Ken's a great guy.
We learned a lot about Ken.
Love Ken.
Interesting.
Ken tells various stories that you probably didn't want to know at the campfire and all sorts of things. I won't elaborate. Yeah, he's that dad.
I spent an American Thanksgiving with the Canadians one year. It was interesting.
Wow.
They don't have turkey. I don't know what we had that night. It was really fun. I mean, it was just not a traditional American Thanksgiving.
Nobody had shoes on though, I'm sure.
No, they did not.
Because Ryan never wore shoes.
No, I had shoes on. I think I might have been the only person. So
Yeah.
You may have insulted them.
maybe I did.
That's why they.
That's why we don't talk anymore. I don't know.
It's all starting to become so
Yeah.
clear.
It makes sense 8 years later.
You need to lay down on the couch. We'll have a therapy session.
Let me do that. Well, what took you so long to ask that? I mean, we've been doing this for a year, and I've had a lot to get off my chest. And
Because we know I've got someone else to back me up now, so we can just keep going. You fall asleep and we're like, okay, good, he's out. Now what we got?
Let's actually do the podcast here. Randy Jones says, hey, Ashby. Madison says she got a drop. Look forward to listening later. We're getting new fans, y'all. New fans.
Yes. Hey, Mr. Randy.
We're going to have to just really add you to the team at this point. Hey, Big E. He said hey to me, too. You didn't get anything, Kyle.
That's okay.
He likes her best and me second best. So I'm number 2. So
That's fine.
yes.
I know where I'm valued at. It's
Yes.
okay.
That's all right. So,
I have a wife that loves me.
oh, good.
And a dog.
Erica's great. And I guess Rickie is, too.
So, moving forward.
Moving forward.
I'll have to put your phone on
Hey,
silent.
guys, why are we...
It is on silent. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So today...
What's all this words about?
Look at all these words that I just copy and paste from every episode. I'm surprised I hadn't done like a repeat of okay, today we're discussing Thor again. No, we're not. Thank God. We are excited to continue exploring the Marvel Cinematic Universe with this episode on Captain America: The First Avenger. But before we do that, if you have not, we beg you, especially you new watchers on Facebook and those of you who are listening. Because Ashby comes in and doubles or triples our, listener count. Please subscribe to us on so many different platforms. We are on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, Pod Addict, TuneIn, iHeartRadio. I mean, all the important podcast stations. So make sure you search for us by typing in What Media.
All one word, sorry, all one word. Sorry, I was drinking water at the moment. I didn't want to spit on your laptop.
Let's try it again.
It's okay.
Make sure to search for us by typing in What Media.
All one word.
And please rate and review us. We accept 5-star reviews only. 5 stars. How many stars are on the Captain America shield? It's just 1 star. But we want 5 Captain America shields. So, also,
Okay.
go ahead and follow us on social media. We are on Facebook and Instagram again. What Media. All one word. We're also on Twitter. WTW_media. Because Twitter has a character limit, and What Media is just 1 character too long. And then we're also on YouTube. That's again What Media, all one word.
Oh, yeah, if you're searching, search YouTube.
Search YouTube What Media. Yes, if you type in youtube.com/What Media, you will not find us because we don't have 100 subscribers yet, and we've been begging and pleading for 100 subscribers.
I haven't done a great job of that.
You have,
being honest.
I really blame you for this.
I put the videos together; they're fine, but I haven't done my best.
That's okay. We agree. You're
I'm
terrible.
learning.
You're terrible at this. I know.
I've learned with Beards and Boots, hey, this makes things better. How do I transfer that over to what? I'm getting there.
I'll work on it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Ashby's going to become our social media person. She'll
Yeah.
work on it.
She doesn't realize yet we don't have any money.
Seriously,
So,
there's 0
don't let her
money.
know.
Yeah. There's a community reference in here. Anyway, if you like this episode or any of the other 48, 49, I don't even know where we're at now. We're close to 50 at this point.
No, 50 was last week.
Was it?
Yep.
Are you sure?
Yep, that's what it said on my cell phone.
Are you looking at Apple calls?
No, this was whatever it is. Maybe it was Apple. I don't know.
Apple has a wrong count. I think we're at 49 tonight.
Who knows?
Who knows?
No, they're just.
There's a rent joke in there too. Who knows?
That's a good one.
Here goes. All right. Anyway, please share this with people that you know, people who may like it, and people who may not like it. I don't care.
People you may not know.
Yeah, if you think they'll hate it, and we still want a subscriber, just send it to them. I mean, we'll take the viewer. Yeah, but if you do that, tag us, and we'll give you a shout out next time we record. Tonight, we are diving into Captain America: The First Avenger. Here is a huge spoiler warning for today's episode.
Yeah.
While this movie is our primary focus, we will be going deep dive.
That's fun to say.
It
Somebody said
is,
that the
but
other day.
it's not grammatically correct. Possibly discussing details from any of the other 22 MCU films, Marvel television shows, and comic books from which the source material came from, taking the entire saga into account.
Yeah, definitely. We're definitely going to do that.
We're definitely deep diving. So one of the things I'm excited about with this episode, I hope we get to this, whether it be on air or off air. You talked about Tumblr and this really deep fan fiction.
No. Oh no. Those are the parts I took out for the family friends.
And I was going to say, as long as it's family friendly, we can do it on Facebook and this. But afterwards, if it's not, just as soon as we turn the cameras off, let's go.
I didn't bring in fan fiction because that's hard for me to talk about in a public setting. But
So you're telling me I shouldn't look it up at work?
But you do not.
No.
Do not.
Don't look it up on the Johnston County School website.
Definitely don't do that.
Have another scandal on our hands.
Like I did when I went to high school in North Johnston, and I took newspaper, and I definitely looked it up on school computers. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. What's important is that just for Eric, I did bring in some Tumblr fan.
Yes!
Yeah, you guys are
So excited. So before we get into any of that, here's some basic information about this film. Directed by Joe Johnston. He was chosen as the film's director because of his previous work on the period films The Rocketeer and October Sky. Have y'all seen either of those movies?
I've seen October Sky, but it's been a while.
I feel like I saw October Sky.
Yeah.
Rocketeer came out in 91.
For Rocketeer. That's about as far as I got.
Premiered July 19th, 2011. This is actually the first MCU film I ever saw. And it stars Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, or Captain America, alongside Tommy Lee Jones, Hugo Weaving, Haley Atwell, Dominic Cooper, and some guy named Sebastian Stan.
Just some guy.
Kyle, or Ashby.
We're going to let Ashby.
We're going to let you do this?
Oh man. So here's the thing. This is a pretty long summary, but Kyle says that he rambles, and I'm going to stay on point.
So yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I would
talk-
lock it in.
I would do 20 minutes and be like,
Okay.
and then
Do I have
a serum that turned him into a superhero.
Do I have a timer? I know I have one on the phone
Let's
here.
see if we time Nancy.
We're going to go 120 seconds here, so 2 minutes.
Oh God. Okay.
Um,
I can do it.
To start speed reading.
I'm going to speed read
He was
it.
there and he put
Yeah.
a shield on.
so, Ashby,
Ready?
recap this movie in the next 120 seconds. Ready, go!
Steve Rogers is a parentless art student living in Brooklyn in the 1940s. His best friend is Bucky Barnes, and his greatest desire is to join the army and fight in World War II against the Nazis despite his small stature and various health issues. His best friend Bucky gets shipped off to the European theater, and Steve catches eye of a defected German scientist named Erskine. Steve is finally accepted into the army based on a dubious secret military program that he will discover later is attempting to use a serum to create super soldiers. Steve is selected and survives the serum enhancements, only to watch Erskine and any hope of recreating the serum die in front of him. Despite his budding friendship, possibly romance, with the formidable Agent Peggy Carter, Steve resigns himself to using his new mantle as Captain America to sell war bonds. While touring with the USA overseas on the front, Steve learns that Bucky Barnes' unit, the 107, has been killed and or captured by an extremist arm of the Nazi called Hydra. Steve enlists the help of Agent Carter and genius Howard Stark to get him behind enemy lines on a desperate rescue mission, and Steve saves Bucky, earns the respect of his peers and senior officers, and learns that Johann Spent is using what we will come to learn as the Tesseract to create weapons. Steve forms the Howling Commandos, which ends up being Bucky and a few guys from his old unit, and they travel around Europe wreaking havoc on the Axis powers. In pursuit of Zola, the scientist working with Schmidt, Bucky is thrown from a train on the Alps and falls to his death in front of Steve, who vows vengeance on Schmidt and Hydra. Steve and his team, along with Carter and Colonel Phillips, storm the Hydra base, where Steve manages to board the plane that Schmidt is trying to fly to America with bombs meant for major cities. Steve attempts to find him, but ultimately Schmidt defeats himself by touching the Tesseract and being obliterated or possibly absorbed. Steve must then make the difficult decision to fly the plane into the Arctic Ocean to avoid bombs or the Tesseract killing millions of people. He and Peggy discuss dancing as he crashes. The Allied powers win World War II, and both Captain America and Bucky Barnes become war heroes killed in action. Peggy Carter goes on to be an absolute legend in her own right, a founding member and director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Howard Stark never stops searching for Steve in the Arctic, but he does manage to find the Tesseract, and life goes on, as they say, for roughly 70 years until Steve's plane's wreckage is discovered by S.H.I.E.L.D. Under director Nicholas J. Fury. They discover that Steve is not only still in the wreckage, but still alive. He's defrosted. He wakes up in the future, immediately sees through S.H.I.E.L.D.'s crummy 1940s recovery room, busts out, meets Fury, and then the movie just sort of ends rather abruptly, in my opinion, like this summary.
That was awesome.
That was fantastic.
That was right at the buzzer.
Right at 120 seconds. Great job. Here's the cool thing about that. That we've never recapped a movie like that before.
No,
Usually we just ramble, and I read pretty much what Wikipedia says about it because I'm really bad at summing up stuff, and he's even worse.
Yes.
And so you were like the perfect guinea pig for this cause.
I say if you don't come back for every episode, at least every movie, you just pre-record that.
Okay,
Pre-record
I'll
it, send it
all
in.
the summaries for everything.
We're just sitting in got some things like, okay, now,
Oh,
Pulp
man.
Fiction. It's like, wow, you really took a turn, didn't you? I love how you're
Here's
doing that.
Shawshank
You're tapping.
Redemption.
You're like, stay in, Pete. Keep talking. You're like tapping your leg in tempo.
Take a breath. All right, so we have a new format here where instead of, we broke it down previously like into 5 major categories, we've got just a bunch of little questions here regarding our thoughts. So let's start here. Where does Captain America rank in terms of your personal favorite MCU heroes? Kyle, I'm going to let you go first because Ashby's catching her breath.
Okay. He's my number one.
You're number one, but you don't have his shirt.
I don't. But I had his action figure when I was a little kid. I still do.
That's disappointing.
I still have that action figure, so
That's so disappointing.
you don't even have your toys. I don't want to hear it. I've got my Captain America action figure still.
I'm 33, Kyle.
Hey, I don't care.
I'm jealous of you, but
You can't knock me down.
I'm
proud of my
not.
toys.
I'm not knocking you down. I'm a little jealous.
Someday I'm gonna have a kid. They're gonna play with them. It's fine. But no.
And someday I'm gonna have a kid who's gonna borrow your kid stuff.
I'm gonna teach him. Don't let him borrow your things. He's bad. No, I thought about it, and honestly, I put him as a tie with Wolverine, and then I realized you said MCU. And
Yes,
not just
MCU.
Marvel.
Yes.
So, because Wolverine's right up there in favorite Marvel ones, but MCU, I'm a total Captain America fan. So, Ashby, how about yourself?
I've always maintained that I'm more of a Steve Rogers fan than a Captain America fan, although I cannot wait to see Sam Wilson be Captain
Yes.
America.
Super excited for Sam.
But Cap definitely ranks at the top for me as a superhero. This probably makes sense to no one, but I really love Iron Man as a superhero, even though I'm not a huge fan of Tony Stark. Again, I know that doesn't make a lot of
there's
sense.
a difference
So,
No.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense.
yeah. So anyway, Cap is up there for sure.
Okay. For me, Captain America is probably top 2, probably behind Spider-Man because I'm just a big Spider-Man fan.
Yeah.
And I don't care who it is. I mean, whether it be Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, or oh my goodness, Tom Holland. Yeah. But yeah, Cap's probably number 2. Like I said, this is the first film I watched because it was Captain America. And I remember growing up watching the Spider-Man TV show, and when the episodes where Captain America shows up, like in the 5th season, were some of my favorites. Because like, oh my goodness, there's, I'm really patriotic. Go Cap, yeah, woo. But yeah, Captain America
I just
definitely.
remember seeing the movie and being like, I want to go out and I want to buy a shirt. I didn't do it, obviously.
I want a big shield like that.
But it's
just
like,
around.
I need more things. I'm going to the comic book store and be like, you know what? I've got Batman and everybody else, but throw him in there as well.
Let's spend another $1,000.
No, I ain't spending that much.
Facts.
I'm excited though. Random news story in the middle of all this.
Oh,
comic
random.
books are finally back in production this week.
Yay!
Diamond cut that out, and pretty much one company prints all of the comics. And in the middle of the beginning of this coronavirus, they shut everything down. So yesterday was the first time new comics have been out in at least a month, if not 2 months. So,
All right.
but I haven't gone to get mine.
Cool. I'm gonna mix up things a little bit here. We're not doing things in order.
Okay,
Okay.
So you
Fine.
gotta be on your toes here. What's your favorite scene from this movie?
you go ahead.
Oh, I really like the bar scene in London where he's picking the commandos. Like he's telling them, that he wants to go fight, and he and Bucky have this exchange. And I also really like the dichotomy where, Peggy comes in and Bucky's invisible, where Steve has been invisible his whole life and Bucky's kind of the ladies' man. But I will say that probably my favorite scene is the scene between Erskine and Steve the night before he gets the serum. I think it really humanizes the German people in a simplistic way, but I think it's really surprising considering what the original Captain America comics were based on, and it was very vilifying to the Nazi Party, which it should be.
Sure.
Right.
But, Schmidt says people forget that the first country Hitler invaded was his own.
Right.
And I think that's really important to remember. So
Absolutely.
I love that scene.
I feel like without him too, though, because if you didn't have him, then you would only have negative side. You had Hydra and everybody else.
Right.
It just becomes a one-dimensional film at that point. It's just
Right.
good and bad. Where people in general in society, it's not just good and bad. There's shades of gray all over, including in good people or what we consider good people.
Right.
So, because everyone is good to somebody.
Yeah.
So, I like that a lot too.
We were in Wilmington once, and
Just
nobody-
once?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Howard, we stopped by somebody else's house because they lived there, and we hadn't seen them since sometime. I don't remember who it was. I don't know if I knew him. But there was a guy there, and he was high out of his mind. But he looked at us and said, "You know what, man? It's okay. I'm not getting too crazy." He said, "You know what, man?" He said, "Hitler really wasn't that bad of a guy. He just didn't have any friends. So maybe if he would have had a dog, he would have been a better guy." And I was like, okay,
That's really profound.
that stuck with me for the rest of my life. Like, he didn't have any friends. I'd probably be a jerk too. So
You can't disprove it.
no.
Like when I was in college, they made us watch this weird art house film that was basically what would have happened if Hitler had gotten into art school.
Okay.
He would have become like a terrifying dictator
No.
because he would have focused on art instead.
And he may have found something like he really loved painting, like
Like
Yeah.
he would have discovered a new style of paint,
Yeah.
art at that point.
and it actually could be something really pretty, like, and took all the negatives. I know, I
I
actually
need to
really
see
love
this film. Was it at least interesting?
Oh yeah,
would it hold your
I have
attention?
to like find it.
Yeah.
we have to watch this now. We have to review this on the channel now. That's what we're talking about next week.
That'll be your what nights episode you've always wanted.
Kyle and Eric in the morning nights.
So, your turn. Favorite scene.
Is it my turn or was it your turn?
There's no order here. You broke the order earlier, so I'm just jumping around.
All right, so my favorite scene is right after he gets the super soldier serum. Or serum. Let me make sure I pronounce my words correctly. Serum.
Syrup.
We're from the South.
Syrup. Just because you put syrup on something, don't make a pancake shell. All right. So he gets the serum, and they assassinate Erskine. The spy in there, and he takes off after him. And I'm laughing because it's like when kid gets gross work in elementary school, like 4th, 5th grade, and limbs are just coming everywhere, and they don't know how to use them, and they're just all like clumsy all over the place. That's what I'm reminded of when I'm seeing Steve Rogers run down the road, no shirt on, and he's just veering into traffic, like no control. Falls into a window, like just takes the left turn too far, and but he's just chasing down the guy, like still trying to figure out what extent of his body can do. Kid gets thrown in the river, and the kid's like, "Oh, it's okay, I can swim," because this is the 1940s or 30s, and it's like,
"Go get him, man! I can swim."
Kids, that's all they did back then was run and swim. Okay, Steve, of course he's fine. Just that whole scene, him discovering. It was a good introduction to what Captain America, or the physical embodiment of Captain America would be. And it just goes to show, just because you have something doesn't mean you know how to use it correctly the first time.
Yeah.
And so it was a learning experiment. Plus, he catches the guy, and the guy just, cyanide pill in his mouth, and oh, okay, that's the thing. And that's how serious they are. Wow.
I thought about that watching that again this week. It's like, that sounds painful, like breaking a tooth. Like, I know it's not, and it's just put there, but like,
so you try to break
sound of it's like, oh, I made my tooth.
Well, it brought me to like, how devoted do you have to be to something to want to do that? Like, you get caught, and then, like, I know there's people out there who do that, or who would do that, but I just can't imagine being that devoted to a cause that's so. I don't know.
I don't know if it's devotion or like I would.
Is
rather,
it fear or?
Yeah, I would rather like die in 30 seconds than die being tortured over days and weeks and.
Or even if you said anything, if Hydra got you back, it'd be
exactly.
even worse.
They were shooting you with magic blue, tesseract lasers at that point, and you just disappeared. Hail Hydra!
He hadn't been there. He didn't know.
Yeah. All right, Kyle. Since we're out of order, what was your favorite scene?
Well, mine's going to lead into who won the movie. Is that okay? Is that going to break your world if I jump into that topic?
I guess you can do it.
We're going out of order. I just want to make sure I don't ruin anything.
Well, I was going to do nitpicks next, but we can do who won the movie.
Well, mine's hand in hand though. But my favorite scene are all of the tiny Steve Rogers scenes, and that leads into, for me, tiny Steve Rogers wins the movie for me, because without that person, without who he is, the rest of the movie doesn't happen. It doesn't matter who, like, because they even talk about, it amplifies who that person is. So if you're bad, you get amplified even to be worse. But if you're good, you get better. And so you learn so much from Tiny Steve to realize that he just has a heart of wanting to do good. He wants to fight the bad guys. And he even said, he's like, I don't want to kill anybody. Yeah. I just want to do what's right.
By the way, the fandom prefers pre-serum Steve.
I'll take that.
Not that's offensive.
I'm sorry. Little Steve.
No, you can't do that.
Okay. Steve Jr.
Little Steve is a whole nother
That's a whole nother world. Steve Jr. was... Steve Jr.
We're a family show, I promise.
It's family until you bring it up to make it obvious that it wasn't family. To everybody out there, it's still family.
Oh my goodness, we're going to lose.
But I definitely...
2 of our viewers over this.
I noted him being in the alley, the part there where he picks up a trash can lid for the first time as a shield.
Yes.
And like what that's going to represent. And then the famous line you hear forever from him is, I could do this all day.
Yeah.
The fact that he stands up and gets beat up, and like, he doesn't even have a chance. He never gets a lick on the guy. He just gets the crap beat out of him. But he keeps coming back up because he wants to defeat the bad in life. He wants to beat up some dude. He just wants to do what's right. Because even what led to it was people paying respect and showing what's happening in the war on the big screen at the movie. And instead, this guy's talking trash like, start the cartoon, start the movie. And he's just like, can you sit down? Can you be quiet? Like, be respectful. And like, next,
he's getting beat up in the alley. So that's what happens when you tell a heckler in the movies, hey, sit down.
Right.
You immediately get up out of your seat.
Right.
You go to the alley, and then if you're the strong guy, you just get the crap beat out of you.
Don't start nothing.
If you can't, yeah, exactly.
I feel like he's respectful.
That's been the mantra of Americans in the movie theaters for the last 100 years.
Yeah.
I just feel like, Steve Jr. is that respectful, though, that he would be like, oh, we're doing this? Okay, after you, good sir. And he holds the door and, like, follows him
It's
out.
like, here, can I hold your coat while you on my face?
100%.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But that scene and
I can hold your coat all day.
the car ride he has with Agent Carter, where he says, this is probably the longest conversation I've ever
Peggy.
had with a woman.
Peggy.
Sorry,
Yes.
Peggy, we're getting
The
personal.
fandom,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
On a first name basis.
That's right.
But
Except me, I say Margaret.
Margaret.
she ends up falling in love with him pretty much in that car ride. From what she learns there, leads to their relationship later. So I love that too, where it's not all of a sudden this giant body that makes her love him, because that's what the world would do is, oh, she's only because he's attractive. She
Right,
sees the heart of him.
She knew him before he
Yeah.
was Captain America. which I
She
think
saw him.
is
She
important.
saw
Yeah.
pre-serum Steve
Right.
jump on a grenade,
Right.
not knowing it was not a real
Yeah.
grenade. I mean,
So that was my other one.
I
Yeah.
definitely think that carries into future movies.
Mhm.
The fact that what Peggy and Bucky mean to Steve is someone left on this earth who remembers me
Yeah.
before I was Captain America and
Before
doesn't
I put
have
the
those
stuff in my body.
expectations.
Mhm.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Because everybody assumes when you have those abilities, it's just given. Oh, well, he's so good because he has all this, but it's like
Right.
without that, he could have been like a jerk, but he didn't. And I love the scene, like you brought it up, but when he dives on a grenade, like they're sitting there talking about, oh, he's not big enough. This other guy who would be in every other. The funny part is Chris.
He would have
Evans.
been picked first in every dodgeball game.
Uh-huh.
He climbed the little rope as high as he could, and I mean, he would have been the perfect, physical soldier,
Yeah.
but didn't have the
Well, you look
the
at
gall. Okay, the heart. There we
Yeah.
go. That's a better word than what I was really
Chris
thinking.
Evans and other
Jump on a
movies
grenade.
like when he played Johnny Storm, he was more of a
Rhymes with gall. Huh?
family show, make it obvious. But no, like Chris Evans has played.
The Mountain Dew was a bad idea.
Chris Evans has played the jock guy. He's played the preppy, know it all
Johnny
dude.
Storm is self-absorbed.
He is.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a superhero, but he doesn't have the heart of a superhero.
No.
I mean, he's kind
Flame
of,
on, y'all.
Yeah.
And it's I can't remember. I should have looked it up. Is it Not Another Teen Movie or whatever?
Yeah.
Movie? Is
Yeah.
that the one with him?
With
Yep.
the whipped cream. Yeah.
Yes.
I was thinking about it today.
Family show.
We'll leave that there. He had a great dessert, folks. That's it.
We're renaming our podcast a family show, rated R.
That's the irony. It's
Yes. But I don't know. Like, so he's been that character.
Like you got a big guy in the bar and his name's Tiny.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But for him to come along though and to show you and you believe it, because I'll be honest, like when I saw Chris Evans, that's the only thing I knew about him. Was Not Another Teen Movie, and I was like, well, how's he going to be this superhero? He's already this other superhero.
Right.
He was in a great movie called Cellular in 2004.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, that was like an action.
Yeah,
Thriller.
I got it for like my birthday or something. I'd never seen it, but it was a really good movie. Had William H. Macy and Kim Basinger in it.
Yeah.
Is that a VHS or DVD?
It was a DVD in 2004, yeah.
He was also in The Losers, which
Yes.
is based on another comic book.
Yes.
I can't remember if he did that before he became Captain America or in the interim, but that was fantastic. I love
Yes,
that
it
movie.
was. Sorry, random Chris
Dead
Evans
Space.
Yeah,
facts.
sorry.
No, you're good.
No, it's
that
great.
was good.
So
Nitpicks now?
no, we haven't talked about who won the movie.
yeah.
You talked about who
Oh, sorry.
won the movie for
I
you.
talked
That
my,
was your
my 20
segue,
minutes.
Kyle.
That whole 20 minutes was me. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
You guys go.
we rambled for an hour here, and
I just assumed you like
this
the
is
same
now a
thing.
2-part episode because.
So who won the movie?
So who won the movie for you?
I've been told it's, what is it? Correct term, Steve?
Pre-serum.
Serum Steve.
You
I'm
gotta
gonna
put this
say serum. It's
Serum.
Pre-serum.
Serum.
Pre-serum, Steve.
Before he
Okay.
drank the syrup.
Okay.
Alright. I know who your answer is, so I'm going to go ahead and put mine in.
Oh, you would be surprised.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we have the same answer then. For me, who won the movie? Margaret Peggy.
Okay.
Carter.
Yes.
Okay.
I get it.
Having not, I mean, she wasn't even a really big presence in the comics. I think she was based off Sharon Carter
Yes.
coming into the comics, so she didn't really have a really big basis. But it was refreshing to see, especially in early like superhero MCU whatever lore, a woman who kicks butt, doesn't take crap from anyone, no matter how super strong, whatever. She wasn't a damsel in distress.
Right.
She held her own, and even though this is the 1940s and women were getting no respect then, she still commanded respect within the SSR. She ended up with a TV show of her own. She has a huge fan base. I wish we would have seen her in more.
Oh yeah. I would have loved more Agent Carter.
More Agent Carter. I'm still hoping for like a revival of that on Disney Plus or something, or just more Haley Atwell in MCU properties. There's so much they can do with that. But for me, she won the movie for sure.
Yeah.
Who won the movie for you?
So I was filling out these questions as I was watching the movie, and I got really sad.
See, this is what happens when people actually do the research.
Yeah.
She's like, that boy's swimming. He saved the day.
I just got really sad at the end, and I had a cynical moment, and so I should have probably walked away and come back to it. But instead, I was filling out the questions, and
It was Tommy Lee Jones, wasn't it?
No, all I put was, I mean, the real winners of the movie were the Allied forces. Everyone else loses at least something.
Look at you.
Wow. Wow. Look at that. See,
That's why she's here. She has more heart than
we
me.
are no
It's like,
longer a two-dimensional show.
kid.
We are now three-dimensional, ladies and gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
We are a cube instead of a square.
Oh man,
Mm-hmm.
that's just a little taste of what's to come.
Wow.
That's great.
We've been doing this show for like almost a year now. This is like the deepest conversation we've ever had outside of Dead Poet
It's gonna
Society.
get deep.
Where
I
I edit.
both are going to be on the couch.
How does that make you feel?
I never even thought about those people.
The Allies!
I'm so right. I shut Facebook Live down. I was like pulling up my iPad. I've got to watch this. What's happening? Oh my God, she's right. Look. Look.
Shut it down, ladies and gentlemen. Shut it down. We have peaked officially, okay? We have peaked.
But she said there's more to come.
There's more to go. I know.
I don't think we can handle it. We really just
Get real.
move.
It's like that toaster alarm that I thought of when I was a kid, you know, that wakes you up by slapping like a waffle in your face.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
I really peaked too soon.
It's funny though that you talked about this being a 2-part episode because one of my personal goals was to make this your longest episode.
It'll happen.
I don't know. I mean, did you hear our Christmas TV show? He talked about the Wonder Years for 45 minutes. I mean,
Fantastic.
fantastic recap of that episode.
Yeah.
I still think.
I felt like I watched the entire thing in that.
Eric got
so
to. I was at work the next week. Michael Thompson comes. He's like, "Man, Eric really gave you some crap about talking a little long." He's like, "Did he not listen to himself sing every
I sang
song
the
from
episode from every song. From
He's like, he literally sang every song.
Baby Boomer Saddam.
He's like, I timed it. He's pretty much.
Thank you for
doing as much as you.
MTV.
I was like, I'm bringing that up, Mike. Thanks for having my back.
But it was singing and it was awesome. So yeah,
Hey, in my mind, I rewatched that entire episode. I was happy. When I
it was a great episode.
Yeah, you did.
So anyway,
So-
longest episode ever. Nitpicks.
Nitpicks.
Ashley, you go first.
Actually, I really don't have any, to be honest.
That was a short
Eric
segment.
hates
Yeah, here's the
It's
thing.
okay. I didn't write down anything either. So
At this venture, I felt like I can't really remember back to watching this movie for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I watch a movie for the first time, I try to watch it like with an open heart.
Mhm.
So if I try
clear
to
eyes,
be
full heart,
yes,
can't lose.
Can't lose. I feel like I have to
I
be
need to go back and watch that.
entertained because that's the point. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like what am I watching movies for if I watch them just to find something wrong with
Yeah.
them?
If you're just hate watching, like
Right.
I watched Secret Life of the American Teenager, it was hate
Yes.
watching the whole time.
Yes, and I do that occasionally, but I don't like it. So I
Positive. Put on your positive pants.
correct.
Yes.
Yes, and then I go back and I rewatch it, and then I get angry. If I have something to be angry about. So like in game, first time I watched it, cheered, cried, sobbed, cheered again. Second time I watched it, I was like, hated that, hated that,
Yep.
hated that. You have to.
There wasn't enough in this 3-hour and 10-minute movie.
right.
They needed to add more.
This character got cheated. This character
Yeah.
got cheated. But anyway, so I really, under nitpicks, didn't really have anything except that I love Steve Rogers, but he does have character flaws, just like every good
Sure,
character. And as I was rewatching this, I kind of forgot some of the plot, and I was like, okay, so it's your bro's last night in town before he
thought the same
literally
thing
goes
was.
off to war. And he's planned out the entire evening with you and some ladies. And you can't even be bothered to give him that. You're like, actually, I'm going to go try to join the army for the second time today. Like, wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Come on, bro. It'll be there. The army will still be there. You know, the
Correct.
war's not going to end tomorrow.
Right. And you literally may never see Bucky again. You know?
I thought the same thing watching it because
Yeah.
I didn't think about it the first time, obviously, but this week trying to overlook everything and to see, I was like, man, like, because I forgot he doesn't. He just goes off and he never sees him again. It's like,
Yeah.
how are you going to do that? Even gets the emotional moment where he hugs him and everything else, and it's like you're just going to let that pass. You're just going to go do some paperwork.
So, time for me to get real deep analytical here.
Okay.
I think that actually, plays a part into when he actually does make it to the army and he finds out that Bucky has been behind enemy lines, and maybe, I don't know, I'm just spit on here, maybe he flashes back to like, hey, I could have spent the night with him and 2 beautiful women.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I chose not to because I was selfish. And that was part of his resolve to make sure he went and found his friend,
Right.
To do everything he can. And then again, whenever they lost him,
Yes. Yeah.
for 70 years plus, but thought we lost him forever. Those are little things like when you have moments like that, you think about what you didn't do.
Yeah.
Especially if there's a regret there, you don't think about all the good times at first. You think
Right.
about, man, I wish I would have said this. I wish I would have done this. I wish we would have spent more time together.
Yeah.
So him making that choice early on, yeah, he thought he was being noble, but the real nobility is not necessarily, signing up for the army, serving your country, but it's, family, friends. It's what you celebrate at the end of your life. I mean,
Right.
yeah. So,
And not to like jump all the way to a different scene, but I think too at the same time when he finds out that Bucky's behind enemy lines, doesn't know if he's alive or not, he finally has the ability to do something about it. Whereas all the rest of his life, Bucky's been the one that saves him.
Mm-hmm.
When he's getting beat up in the alley, Bucky's like, pick on somebody your own size. And like,
Right.
he knocks him and like punches the guy once, kicks him in the butt, and it's done. But like, how many times does that happen? Like over and over, I'm sure. This is the first time in life that he has the ability and the power to go do something about it. So I'm sure that did finally play like you were talking about. I would think anyway. What's yours? What, you got some nitpicks?
not really. This was, like I said, the first MCU movie I watched in theaters, ever saw. I loved it. I loved that it was not a current piece, but it was a period piece from the 1930s and 40s. I love the historical lens there. It's not just, it's New York in 2012 and, we're just kicking butt in the present day. Now, this is, you're dealing with things that we didn't personally experience, but it did a really good job of putting you in that time period, in that time frame. It did a really good job being accurate with, again, the way Peggy was treated and, disrespected. Even then, I mean, there's probably still going to be some of that now because people are still living.
But the thing is, like, how much your character expanded because of this.
Exactly. But there's really, if I had like one nitpick, I really hated that there was, I guess, built up like character tension between Peggy and Steve because of the one army chick or whatever. Like, I just felt like that was put in there to kind of drive a wedge between them, but it didn't really serve a purpose in that sense.
Well, it just served the purpose to like test out his shield in the next scene. She's like, "Oh, you got a shield?
Boom, boom, boom.
Oh, good,
It works.
Yeah.
So,
Wakanda forever. All right.
Well, plus I feel like also Steve is sort of figuring out women
Yeah.
now that women are attracted to him.
Now that women are figuring him out, he's trying to figure
And
them
so
out too.
I think he's genuinely interested in Peggy, and I think that he really only has eyes for her. But I mean, if you were Steve and ignored your whole life, and suddenly women are literally throwing themselves at you, I mean, he really didn't like try to woo that woman.
No,
He was
no,
like,
he was
let's
just-
go make out in the supply closet. She was like, hey, and he was
Hey,
like,
come here. He's like, oh, okay. Well, what's in this supply closet?
I thought
You need
you
some
needed help
papers,
lifting
some
things.
paper clips.
right, and he was kind of like hands up,
Yeah.
and she was like, but I get what you're saying about that.
So, I thought this was a great movie. So, what about you? Nitpick?
only thing I have, and it's not really like crazy, but I wish the Red Skull wasn't taken out as way.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because I would like to see Red Skull further. Like in the comics, there's such a big battle. Like that's his
true.
main thing.
He's a bigger
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
So, it would have been cool to have seen, because we know for the most part, like this version of Captain America is pretty much done with, doing anything. So to see that, it would have been cool to see Red Skull to make some other appearances.
It's really
other than what he did.
It's really interesting, especially with superhero movies. They're very episodic by nature for the most part. You have good guy, you have villain who messes up good guy, then you have good guy who conquers villain. Usually by killing the villain, because that's a very heroic thing to do.
Right.
And the MCU was not immune to that early on, but it was, until later on. I know they had Loki, who was a reoccurring, but he turned out to be some kind of an anti-hero. But I like the idea of having a villain span multiple arcs, the way we talked about in Star Wars. You have Darth Vader, in the original trilogy, Kylo Ren in the sequel trilogy. That's another conversation.
It's even like Batman. Like
the
you always had Bane that or somebody returned, or you're like Scarecrow in the Nolan trilogy. He was in there throughout all three.
Yep.
Well, then it allows for time for nuances.
Yeah.
Which you don't have.
So I think the MCU's figuring that out. I know with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier Disney Plus series, they're bringing back Baron Zemo, who was in Civil War, and they're allowing, I guess, that character to do more than just a one-note character. He could have killed himself easily in that movie, and just another one-off villain, and that's whatever. But I think early on in the MCU, and just again with superhero movies in general, they're just used to killing off villain in the movie and just one movie and then you're done.
Right.
And I think they're finding out as time goes on, wait, if this is a really great character, then we don't, the superhero can topple the villain, but don't have to just end it right away. So
I think they honestly figured that out with Loki.
Yeah.
Because he was such a fan favorite early on, and I think he was meant to sort of be Thor's villain.
Yes.
And then they were like, well, what if we turned him into an anti-hero? Kind of like a Byronic, I don't care, but I really care, and I'll kill you if it suits me, but I could just as easily save you. And so that's really interesting. I'm so glad he's getting his own TV show.
Yes, that's going to be fun to watch. So.
Let's say we were going back and watching Thor the other week to see, like, you have that love for Loki at the beginning, like, because you start to realize he actually he's a person and you care about this guy. He's not just straight up, I'm the bad guy, hate me, I'm going to destroy and do all these evil things. Like, you cared for him knowing that he's going to continue to do these other things. But
it's one of the things they did really well with Thanos, and I know we'll talk about Thanos, I guess a year from now when we do Infinity War, or as we get to Avengers next month, and then the mini films that they kind of peppered him in throughout the way. But Thanos wasn't just a one-note villain. He had nuance. He had backstory. You understood where he was coming from, whether you agreed or not. One of the things that I really, when we get to Black Panther, I really loved Eric Killmonger.
Yes.
And he was just so layered, and I hated the fact that he got killed off at the end.
Right.
And I'm just hoping there's a way to bring him back, because he just brought so much depth to that character. That's another conversation for another time.
Yeah, we're a fourth of the way through this podcast, guys.
Yeah, look at that. 40 minutes in.
41 minutes.
Yeah, once we had the theme song at the beginning, 41 minutes in. If you had to recast any role in this movie, who would you recast and why?
Who you got?
We've already discussed my opinion on Marvel casting. I would not recast a single soul. They're casting perfection.
I agree.
Straight through.
I agree 100%.
No comment.
So if I had to recast,
See, I know how Eric works because I reread this says, if you had to, I was like, he's not going to let me slide, so I have to find one.
Yeah.
I did one.
If we were forced to recast somebody,
Okay.
not commenting anything on their, performance in this movie, but if you had to it would be like someone like Tommy Lee Jones, and you just recast him with someone like in that same mold just to see what it was. But I felt like he did a good job in this movie too. So I'm not
I
really.
have an answer.
Okay, here we go. Finally, someone's going to come.
This is also like a fun fact. Sebastian Stan was considered for Steve Rogers.
Yes, he was.
And if we just rewind, do everything all over again except Sebastian Stan play Steve Rogers, I would watch the mess out of that.
Would he play Tiny Steve Rogers too?
Yes.
He's politically incorrect.
He would play pre-serum Steve Rogers.
That's right.
How about you?
Ashby hates me when we forget that. If we had to recast like Captain America, if that was, let's just say that's the role we're recasting. Oh my goodness. This is where I should probably do the research. And
yeah.
So
who's unprepared this week?
I'm always unprepared.
Not me.
I've been unprepared for the last 3 months, dude. I have been phoning it in for the last 3 months. Have you not noticed?
I thought in depth on this one.
Oh.
Because I was going to skip it. But I was like, nope. He said, if you had to, and I know how Eric is.
Well, then you go then. Let's hear
go.
it. Let's hear it then, big boy.
Dr. Abraham Erskine, is that correct?
Played by Stanley Tucci.
Yep.
Yes.
I thought he did an amazing job.
That's
I
how you
liked
pronounce his
him.
name.
I really liked him.
I left him off the starring list because I couldn't pronounce Tucci.
I noticed.
So,
I literally deleted 3 names. I'm like, okay, can't pronounce this, this, and this. Let's just leave it off. I can pronounce Atwill. So
I'm replacing him with Robin Williams. And I checked. Robin Williams was still alive when this movie came out.
that was my first question.
Okay.
So Robin Williams, knowing first off a lot of his comedy stuff, he did it with a giant accent anyway. So he could have pulled off the accent side of it. But if you take Good Will Hunting Robin Williams and put him in this position, it would have been amazing. First off, go watch Good Will Hunting. You still haven't watched that jerk. But
It's been a while since I've seen it, but
Yeah.
I get the gist.
But Robin Williams is my favorite, and so for it to put him there in that situation, I think he could have done just as good, if not better job. I love the other. He did an amazing job. I had none, but I knew I had to pick somebody.
Okay.
I have
So
an
it's
answer too.
that would work.
Okay, what's yours?
For Captain America.
Okay.
David Hasselhoff.
Early 90s.
Early 90s Captain America. Let's just put him back in there and finish what he started.
There's a reason.
I'm not serious. That's I promise.
Moving on.
Do you have any questions about this movie that have been left unanswered? Unanswered questions.
I don't.
I have one.
I left this one. What you got?
So at the end, Steve's driving this plane, crashes it into the snow. Why didn't he just jump out of the plane?
Oh, there's a meme about that where Captain Rhodey, Rhodey, Colonel Rhodes, not Captain.
Terrence
Colonel
Howard.
Rhodes. No,
Don Cheadle.
let's not talk about
Let's
that.
not talk about him.
It's
Okay.
the one casting mishap that happened, and other than
So you think Don Cheadle was better?
Yeah, I do.
Thank you.
I do. Don Cheadle was better.
I agree.
Now, to be fair, Terrence Howard wasn't given the time.
He was given the money though.
He was given the money. Anyway, not important.
Anyway, moving on.
What was I even talking about?
Um,
The meme where it's like you put little blurbs, above like certain characters, and it was
Yes.
Colonel Rhodes, and it was like, I mean, no offense to Steve Rogers, but I just wouldn't have died. Like you just jump out in the plane.
Just jump into the water. You can swim just like that kid that you left
Yeah.
in the harbor there.
I just like to envision though that he was afraid that if he jumped out, it left the plane that could have hurt somebody else. So if he put it down himself,
He wasn't steering that thing at that point. It was on a collision course to where he could
Either
have.
way.
Yes.
He could have steered.
I'm
it
trying to
every
make
time.
a good excuse.
It's a terrible excuse.
Also, and not to push us further towards the therapy couch, but do you think
Here we
he
go.
sort of didn't think he deserved to live after what happened to Bucky?
Oh, true, great point.
Oh,
That's good.
wow.
I mean, he had something to live for. He had Peggy,
Sure.
but I really think that he thought
He
this
missed.
is
He
what I
missed out
feel.
on that dance for his one true love.
Right,
He wanted to go meet Bucky.
that's right. His one true love.
His one
You're
true
We're even
correct.
saying he doesn't deserve Peggy if he feels like he's done.
We're an
it, so.
hour into this, and we've gotten to the heart of this movie. But
Can we
Bucky
just,
Barnes is Steve Rogers' one true love.
Yes.
Can we just turn
offense
this-
to
One
Peggy.
TP. Yes.
Let's turn this table and we'll sit on the couch. I can sit over here.
She's gonna do her best Dr. Fraser Crane impression. Go ahead. I'm listening. Do you have any unanswered questions? Nope.
No.
Where does this movie fall in your rankings of MCU films, and how does this movie hold up 10 years later?
How about you start?
I'll start.
Yeah, you start.
You're the one with the list.
I have
so-
the list. Let me pull up the list here. So when I made this list right before I watched Endgame, it was number 9
Okay.
on the list, and it was the lowest ranked Captain America movie. There were 2 others ahead.
Yeah.
Winter Soldier was 1, and Civil War was 6. I would probably add Endgame ahead of it. But I would not add Far From Home, Spider-Man Far From Home ahead.
Yeah.
So it would be number 10 on my list. It would be behind Thor Ragnarok, Guardians of the Galaxy 1, Civil War, Avengers, Infinity War, Homecoming, Black Panther, Winter Soldier, and Endgame. So
Okay. I need to go through and actually rank, because when people
Me
ask
too,
me,
yeah.
I kind of off the top of my head, I'm like, well, it's really there,
In my mind, it's like the
actually
past 5 movies
do
I've
a
watched.
list.
Sure, this is like
this is
one.
number
That's
1.
fine.
I love Far From Home. Number
Wait.
1.
There's 20.
You watch 20 MCU movies, you're like, they're all in my top 5.
Yeah, it's one big story.
What-
Top 5 all time.
Yeah. Oh man.
And for how it holds up 10 years later, going back on the rewatch, it's it was just as enjoyable as it was the first time I watched it.
Absolutely.
9 years ago. So, all right, you two, where does it rank?
I'm for sure. Well, I put him in top 3, but honestly, it's that like I just said, the rest aren't fresh in my mind. I even I put top 3, maybe even number 1. That's what's written down, typed out on my paper.
Okay.
And
I mean, it's an OG.
well, my thing is, it got me interested in Captain America because we've talked about him
Okay.
before in the sense that we, growing up watching cartoons and things like Spider-Man, we knew who he was.
He was great in that Marvel versus Capcom game.
Yeah, but we didn't really know who. Some way, I had the toy.
He had a shield. It was
I
like
was
a
like, he has
frisbee.
this cool shield. Look at this.
Ow.
Yeah, but I didn't know anything about him, to be honest. And I'm more of the emotional side of things person, where I got so much more out of the movie from pre-serum Steve Rogers than I did with the rest of the movie. So I don't know. For me, you don't get that. You don't get Civil War. You don't get the other. And I'll be fair. Civil War is great, but have read it. I read the Civil War comics right before seeing it, knowing it was going to be different. But there's such a huge difference in there. And I know you couldn't pull that off, and we'll talk about that at some point when we get to Civil War. But so for me, this one stands out more. But that's also fresh in my mind out of the past 4 movies or whatever we've watched. Then it's like, yeah, it's my best one. But I haven't watched all 20.
Those of you listening on one of the great podcast platforms we're on, I am rolling my eyes. So, Ashby, where does this rank in your rankings? Don't say top 5 because it was the last one you watched, please.
No, it's between somewhere between 5 and 10,
Okay.
I think, because it is an OG, and I feel like I think people miss the point of personal rankings, because it's not about what movie was the best. It's not about what it looks like and the scope and anything like that. I think when you personally rank movies, it has to be about how it makes you feel, what it means to you. And like you're talking about, the movie or book that got you into a fandom is so memorable and so personal to you. And so if something that you saw or watched or read opened up a world for you, that's more important than anything else, I think. So, but I honestly, again, I got into the MCU. I've never been a comic book fan, and that's not an offense to comics.
I'm not offended.
I got in it. I feel
I
like
didn't
I
get
got
into it
in
until
it.
like the past 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, it wasn't even on my radar growing up. And then when I got into movies that had comic backgrounds, it felt so labor intensive to try to go back and read comic books, and I was like, I mean, full offense, I'm just gonna watch the movies.
Yeah, no.
Yep.
So anyway, like I said, it's, I don't really remember my entry into the MCU. I just remember at some point I was watching them in the theaters, and then at some point I was like, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And I was a fan, which is kind of what happens to any fandom I'm in. Suddenly I'm just in the middle of it. But I will say, I put, if I'm honest, rewatching this for the first time post Endgame just made me really sad and angry.
Yeah.
Because I was so upset with some of the things that were done at the end of Endgame. And
I cannot wait till we get the Endgame next year.
And watching this and knowing what the future held was just horrifying in some moments and heartbreaking. Yeah. So that's what I put.
Awesome. Random section. Okay, I didn't really know what to title this, but before we get to our fun facts, is there anything else you want to add? A favorite theory, a rabbit hole you went down when you're doing your research? Anything that you want to throw in before we get to our fun facts?
I have random things for the random section.
For the randomness.
Jim Morita, who's played by Kenneth Choi, is also on the show 911 that I'm currently watching.
Okay.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, and so I didn't notice that because I didn't know the first time I watched it, but watching it this week, I was like, wait, where do I know that guy? Like, he had a pole stuck through him once. Like, family show. But then, let's see. The only other thing I really had was I would like to see at the end of Endgame where he goes back, spoiler and everything else, whenever...
We gave a spoiler warning an hour and a half ago.
Yeah.
When he goes back, I would like to see more of how that happens. And I did go back and research today to see, does that fall in timeline with this movie?
Sure.
But, this movie was based mostly in 1942. And I think they said that the time he went back was 1948, somewhere around in there roughly. So
they basically retconned the entire Agent Carter TV
Yes,
show.
I was going to bring that up.
Also made me.
So it doesn't ruin this movie at all. That was my first thought. Was does it change the movie? But it doesn't. But it's for everything else.
Yeah.
What changes here? What's different? Because I feel too, Peggy Carter's such a strong, strong character in general.
Man.
No, and so I really don't think that would change anything. For her
doesn't
thing.
Need a time traveling man messing up her life.
No. And I feel if he showed up though, she would still just be as strong as who she was. Yeah. And I feel he'd have that respect for her to be no, you're doing your thing. Don't worry. Be supportive of her and what she's doing.
But my mind gets kind of blown when I think about that because I love the Agent Carter TV show. And again, I really wanted to see a third season because it left off on such a bad cliffhanger. And they're actually bringing back, what's his name, for season 7 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., spoiler alert, is going back in time as well.
I don't know if I can keep watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Well, there's only one season left.
I'm trying.
I know, it's rough, yeah.
You're talking about Daniel Souza?
Yes, Daniel Souza. And who they were teasing a relationship with him and Peggy Carter in season 1 and 2 of that. So I'm wondering where that falls in line.
Right.
And then if Steve went back in time, is he one of the pallbearers at her funeral?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. There's so many, and I'm going to be really brief about this because we could be here all night. I could do this all day.
I could do this all day, yes.
But, so there's a fan theory that Steve replacing the stones fixed the timelines, but him staying in the 40s created one singular branch off. Mm-hmm. So nothing changes about the canon we know as all the Avengers movies have come together.
Right.
But he starts sort of a new future with Peggy. The other thing that they talk about is the Russo brothers, which, you know, like, just please stop talking. You're just making everything worse. They've said that the husband and the family that Peggy talks about in her bedside when Steve's visiting her, you know, when she's really old, is Steve.
And she just doesn't remember.
And she doesn't remember. And then you don't ever see photos.
Saved my husband.
Right.
He saved himself. Yeah, he went back in time and saved himself.
Right. And so, like, they kept trying to, like, retcon their decisions.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not how it works. Like,
No.
you made a choice.
Yeah,
And
just let it float. Like, don't try to explain it
yes.
away.
Yes.
And it's just problematic on a few different
By the way,
levels.
the Russo brothers got their start on Community, and you know, every time I hear them talking about different time branches, I'm thinking, this is the darkest timeline. This is the darkest timeline.
Yeah. Yeah.
They rolled a one.
So why isn't there more singing in the Marvel movies? Because that's what I get.
I hope we get a musical episode when they do Marvel,
man.
the Marvel What If on
That
Disney
would be
Plus.
That would be
fantastic.
good.
Give me a musical episode, everybody.
But
I will-
anyway,
yeah.
at the end of Endgame, I cried when he went back and danced with her. I mean, I sobbed hysterically. That's why I went and watched it alone the first time, because I knew that was going to happen. It's just me and a stranger, you know, beside me, like, sobbing. And so I don't have a problem with that. I love Steve and Peggy. I love their relationship. But if he had gone back and, like, explained what was happening to her and danced with her and then, like, noped out of there, that's another thing. But that's actually one of my, like, random things I said.
Well, jump into the randomness.
Okay. I said, let's talk about the serum.
Okay.
This is actually going to be really succinct.
The serum.
One of my biggest issues with Endgame is when old Steve comes back, and well, I have other issues, but this is one of my biggest ones. So he leaves to, you know, and he comes back a few seconds later, basically. And that would have been super cool, except he's super old, and this is not an ageism thing. I just feel like it was completely ignored that the principle of the serum means that Steve scientifically can't age. And I was backed up by this fact rewatching this movie, because when Steve is trying to get drunk in the bar, he says to Peggy, Erskine said the serum would affect my cells, create a system of regeneration and healing, which is why I can't get drunk. Now, anyone who's ever taken a science-based class with me knows that it's not my thing. But I looked up, basically, I did, like, the dummy Google search of, like, aging. And
it's more research than we did.
Correct. Okay. So it says, put very simply, aging is a series of processes that include direct cellular damage, accumulation of cellular waste, cell errors, and imperfect cellular repairs, which result in the familiar signs of aging and ultimately lead to the development of age-related diseases that kill us. So I don't know about you, but does that sound like something this serum would allow to happen to Steve's body? I just don't think he can age.
Yeah.
Especially on that timeline, because it makes me think, whenever we're talking about the regenerative part, it made me think of Wolverine or Logan.
Yes.
And it's like, well, you see Logan and he finally is old, but it took a very long time for him to get there. It's not that he just went back in time and, okay, so you're talking
Just stop dying.
however many years. He went back to the 40s.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he would be 50 more, so he's like 70 to 80. Roughly, and that's bad math, but like he's somewhere in there by the time he gets back. So Logan is well into his hundreds at least. I don't even know the math, like well into that because of the past of that.
Right.
But you see him throughout all those movies. And same way, he's young, he's like fresh, his body's constantly healing himself. And especially just age. Like, it's not like something that, like, he got attacked and it caused an issue for him to age. But
Well, so the idea would, you know, does the serum ever wear off, or does it wear off with time?
Right.
Would be the question there. And we don't have an answer for that.
Right.
So, any other randomness you want to add? I put this section in just for you, by the way. Just
No, I have something else, but I'm not. It's fine.
Are you sure?
Are you sure? It's only 58
Yeah.
minutes. You wanted to make, or 50, yeah, you wanted to make this long.
I've got so much more in the other section.
Good.
So
Yes.
it's fine.
All right.
Let's not.
All right. Well, in every episode of our Running the Infinity Gauntlet, we are taking a look at a vital piece of the MCU that helped shape the Infinity Saga. And I'm very excited about this because I usually put this section together, but I passed it on to Ashby this time. With that in mind, Ashby, teach us what we need to know about the Tesseract.
I'm not going to do this as fast as I did the
Don't.
summary.
Please don't. No, take your time on this.
Okay.
We want to learn here. So.
The Cosmic Cube is a fictional object appearing in American comic books published by Marvel Comics. And it first appeared in the Marvel Universe in Tales of Suspense number 79 in July of 1966, which we know was created by Stan Lee. R.I.P.
R.I.P. The OG.
And Jack Kirby. So in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Cosmic Cube has been renamed as the Tesseract. So that's what we know it as. And it contains the Space Stone, which is one of the fictional universe's infinity stones. The Space Stone gives the user power over space. Anyone holding the Space Stone can create a portal from one part of the universe to the other. So a little rundown of everywhere that we sort of see the Space Stone or the Tesseract. So
it's a lot of places.
It's a lot of places. It's kind of one of the main artifacts in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I would say, other than probably Mjolnir.
I mean, they're still
Sorry.
trotting that thing out in 2019. I mean,
yeah,
so.
Absolutely. So the Tesseract plays a major role in the overall cinematic universe, Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's introduced first in the mid-credits scene of Thor, and it is in the custody of Nick Fury with S.H.I.E.L.D. So in Captain America: The First Avenger, it's revealed that the Tesseract was brought to Earth by Odin centuries ago. In the film, the Red Skull finds the Tesseract in Norway and uses its power to create weapons for Hydra before he's defeated by Captain America, and the Tesseract is retrieved from the Arctic Ocean by Howard Stark. So it is seen again in the Avengers, and I'm really glad I actually had to look this up because I was watching it. I was like, so wait a second, it was there, but then it was there.
I'm glad you're doing this. I was saying, I was like, I remember it's been multiple places, but I don't remember.
So Howard Stark has it. Then it's seen again in the Avengers, where it's stolen by Loki from S.H.I.E.L.D. Loki then uses it to create a portal to allow the Chitauri to come in. Basically, once Loki's defeated, the Avengers allow the Tesseract to be taken by Thor back to Asgard. So that's where it is. It's briefly mentioned in Thor: The Dark World and in Age of Ultron, where it's revealed that the Tesseract, in fact, is a containment unit for the Space Stone, one of the 6 Infinity Stones. At the end of Thor Ragnarok, Loki steals the Tesseract as the survivors flee Asgard to escape Hela. And at the start of Infinity War, Loki hands the Tesseract over to Thanos so that he'll spare Thor's life. And then Thanos crushes the cube, revealing what we know, which is that it's just a housing unit. And he places the Space Stone in his Infinity Gauntlet. So a little sort of, now we go back in time a little bit.
Flashback.
Yeah, a little flashback. In 2019, in the 2019 Captain Marvel movie, which is actually set in 1995, which is when the Tesseract would have been in the custody of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury. Dr. Wendy Lawson tries to use the Tesseract to build a lightspeed engine, but while on a test run, they crash and an explosion causes Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, to attain cosmic power. Later aboard Dr. Lawson's laboratory, Goose, the alien cat, ingests the Tesseract before regurgitating it back onto Nick Fury's desk. And then in Endgame, the Space Stone, along with the other Infinity Stones, is reduced to atoms by Thanos after his success of eliminating half the existence of the universe to keep them from being used to undo his work. And the Avengers go back in time to retrieve the past version of the Tesseract from the New York City Chitauri invasion in 2012, although Tony Stark and Scott Lang fail in stealing the 2012 Tesseract, resulting instead in 2012 Loki escaping with it. And so Stark and Steve Rogers have to go back then to 1970 and successfully retrieve the Tesseract from an army base in the 70s, and then they use the Space Stone from the 70s along with all the other past Infinity Stones to reverse Thanos' actions and erase the past version of Thanos and his army from existence before Steve then returns all of the time stones to the timeline they were taken from. And I can't even begin to go in any more detail than that because my head already hurts.
No, that's awesome.
I really like, especially, we in the Avengers, we see that we allow Thor to take it to Asgard, but we get it that expanded on a little more in the Endgame, where there's actually a big conversation, a big what do we do with it, and we're gonna take it, and no, we're gonna take it, and it's going to Asgard, and just
right,
yeah. So it's just kind of like that, layers upon layers there, and then Loki's like, no, I'm gonna take it and create my own Disney Plus TV show.
Exactly.
That's what makes me think about all these movies and to know. Man, I know people are hired to do this, but to keep track of all these things, to for the most part make sure it all flows and works well together, because I would ruin it and be like, oh, here it is, throw this thing back in there.
Yeah, there are people who are hired by publishing companies and people who make movies as well, just to be continuity experts. That's their entire job.
Yes, and there are some franchises that should really look in the hiring people.
Yes, you
like
should.
that.
Talk about that.
they
So-
should.
But as you were talking, I was just
Be
trying to
better.
picture it on the wall. Like
Yeah.
somebody just like, here's this, and here's
Yeah.
this.
Yes.
And it's like, hey Joe, where's the thumb?
There's that great Sunny in Philadelphia. You know,
Yes, where it's like the string.
it's like this right here. You could have had the power of the gods, yet you wear a flag on your chest and think you fight a battle of nations. I have seen the future, Captain. There are no flags, so let's slip on the Infinity Gauntlet. And let's look at 6, one for each Infinity Stone, of our favorite observations and insights from Captain America: The First Avenger. There are 3 of us tonight, so we each brought 2 facts.
Okay.
I hope you brought extra because he steals. Ashby, you get to go first. So,
Okay.
first fun fact. Number 1.
This is where I promised that I would bring some weird stuff.
Yes!
From
Woo!
Tumblr, because I know that normally you guys do really awesome fun facts that are, you know, about like behind the scenes and stuff like that. So I tried to get weird with it.
Yes!
We're
Here.
We're here for
in
it.
a continual segment every time you come on.
So-
Getting weird with Ashby.
Yeah.
That's also the name of my memoir.
Great.
Anyway,
Okay.
moving on.
So, fun fact number 1, the Howling Commandos. In the MCU, we're led to believe that Steve selected the Howling Commandos from men that Bucky has been serving with in the 107th, which is true. The Howleys have a long comic book history, which we won't get into, but I find it culturally very interesting that Captain America chooses for his merry band of men an African American man, a Japanese American man, a Texan, a Frenchman, and an Englishman to be on the team with he and Bucky. When you consider the socio-political ramifications of that at the time. It's not surprising, though, given that the MCU Steve is from Brooklyn, which in the early 20th century was both an industrial hotbed of wartime production and a neighborhood of immigrants, predominantly African American and Puerto Rican. So Steve would have grown up surrounded by Americans and immigrants with various skin colors and cultures, making his selection of the Howling Commandos very historically believable.
That's
That's
awesome.
awesome.
I love that. That's awesome.
That's why she's here.
That,
We're just trying
We're
to
gonna
start
have to-
with her.
yeah,
Like,
we're gonna just
you
have-
follow what you want, and we'll just be here.
what are we talking about next week, Ashby? Because I really don't know at this point. Numero dos. Kyle,
You want to go dose?
you go dos.
Let's see.
I'll go 2. I mean,
Yeah, go for it, because I was so like caught up in that I don't know where I'm at this point. Like I've
all
got
right.
things
So
to
number
do.
2, Haley Atwell surprisingly touching Chris Evans' chest as he emerged from the pod upon turning into Captain America was very much improvised. And the surprise on her face is genuine, as she admitted in interviews that she was very taken by Chris's physique, as I'm sure a lot of people were,
Same girl.
and nearly broke character and ruined the take that made it into the film as a result. Not as good as her fun fact, but it, you know. Number 3.
I was jealous. It's like I want to touch
I
that.
want-
Like, how do I get that?
Is it
Right.
real?
For real.
Slap me into that machine.
Look at the sunlight! Oh, you go. Number 3. Number 3.
I thought about this because it was cool. I found this fact, but it says throughout the film, Steve uses the sidearm while fighting Skull's forces. In the comics, he used the sidearm meaning gun for everyone at home, until realizing that his new shield that Franklin D. Roosevelt gave him could be used as a weapon by throwing it, and it subsequently replaces the sidearm.
Like I said, he steals.
We use the same website. You're like, oh, first one, great.
Yeah.
I even go to like 3 deep to try to
I
find
found
something else.
all of these and was like, I gotta do better.
Yeah.
I can
Do better than calendar.
Okay, so
please.
I'm.
But I want go ahead.
I was
Just don't skip ahead because I want to talk.
Okay, well then you go ahead.
Well, like watching this, I couldn't stop thinking like, why in the world does everyone give Ben Affleck's Batman such crap for killing people and having a gun or anything when all of a sudden Captain America's rolling up?
Because
on
Batman
everybody?
didn't do it for America, Kyle.
Evidently, because Steve Rogers is shooting people right and left in this movie. I kept noticing. I
can't
was
wait
like,
for Hunter Batten to hear me say that Batman is literally the worst superhero of all time. Like,
we're gonna bring Hunter in. We're gonna bring Hunter and put him right here.
How do you feel about Nightwing and Robin?
Terrible. Anyway,
I'm not the Batman guy. I'm the Robin and Nightwing guy.
I loved when Jensen Ackles was the voice of Jason Todd, and that's about all I know
Well,
about Batman.
There we go. All right, there's another deep fact for you.
But I couldn't help but watch that there and just be like, there's a lot of guns in this. Like I don't remember him carrying a gun this much, but like it's there, and not it didn't ruin it for him. It's like okay, I fully understand this, but
Yeah,
like
there's a lot. I mean, Bucky's a sniper.
Yeah.
That's his role.
yeah, it's a kill.
Yeah, in the 107th, and then
Your job
all
is
the
to
Howleys.
kill people.
Mm-hmm.
Which
and
is
people.
hilarious, by the way, when the scene that's supposed to be kind of cute and like kitschy when Steve salutes him after he saves him,
Mm-hmm.
you're not supposed to give your sniper's location away. Like
Yeah,
that's
way to
terrible
break
Yeah.
protocol there,
form.
Steve.
Where you're not supposed to look and be like,
Rookie.
hey, because now the other team snipers
Like, hell? He's over there. Shoot him.
To be fair, Steve never got trained. They're like, you're going to join the army?
And,
Great.
and you're going to be an actor,
He's
basically.
like, I can do Hutchinson.
Yeah.
Sell those war bonds, Steve.
That's right.
And you just killed your best friend about 20 minutes too early.
That's right.
He's like, but I've not.
It's a miracle.
Times.
It's a miracle Bucky
Yeah.
made it to the Winter Soldier. It could have been Dum Dum Dugan instead.
Just imagine that like Steve is doing this, and then Bucky immediately has to start like grab the gun and start
Oh,
running.
crap!
Oh, Steve, not again!
See, now I'm picturing Winter Soldier with like Jim Morita or Dum Dum Dugan as the Winter Soldier goes, Bucky got killed early on because Steve get away.
Yep.
Straight head.
So this is where I would say Ashby number 4, but her fun fact was so good. You're going to go last. You're going to end our fun fact
Oh,
section.
my last fun fact is so hilarious.
So I'm going to go number 4 here, and we'll let Kyle go number 5, and you'll go number 6. So
Okay.
number 4. It says for Skinny Steve Rogers, but the fandom again refers to him as pre-serum Steve Rogers. Here's a summary of his patient health issues. He had asthma, scarlet fever, rheumatic fever, epilepsy, sinusitis. Is that how you pronounce it? Sinusitis? Chronic or frequent sinusitis. There we go. Chronic or frequent colds, high blood pressure, palpitations or pounding in heart, easy. I can't even pronounce that. He fatigues easily, heart trouble, nervous trouble of any sort. Has had household contact with a tuberculosis patient,
Yes.
parent
His
or
mother.
sibling with diabetes, cancer, stroke, and there's a or question mark, which I'm just assuming is COVID-19 at this point. So,
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
yeah, he definitely.
Like, at all.
Yeah, he definitely had everything. He was like the Mr. Burns of
Yeah.
this movie.
Yeah.
So,
100.
try to stick a needle in Mr. Burns' arm, just goes out the other end.
That's true.
So yeah, pre-serum Steve it's a miracle he was alive.
Yes.
Yes.
For what it sounds like.
Yes.
He was lucky to make it to the serum stage. So, Kyle, number 5.
Here's one that's not on any of these websites that you and I are very fond of looking at.
Where you type in Google fun facts about Captain America.
Yeah.
Oh, website
I
one.
found this one out during when this movie first came out, and then I went on the internet and was like, things about this movie that you may not have recognized. Steve Rogers / Captain America, whenever he does get his serum, he busts out running, trying to figure out how in the world to use his body now. Chris Evans is wearing rubber feet because he's running down the street.
That explains why he.
Where he's barefooted, taking off, running down the street because obviously that would like kill his feet while he's doing. He has these rubber feet on his legs, and you can't really notice it, but if you see pictures of it,
Like
it's
the
really funny.
Hobbits and Lord of the Rings.
Yes, yes, exactly. So pretty much Captain America's a hobbit, but it's just a big one.
Wow.
Nice. Number 6. Ashby.
Okay, this fun fact is called bananas. You guys ready for
It's
this?
like a Gwen Stefani song.
B-A-N-A-N-A-S.
This-
In the mid-1900s, a fungus actually wiped the global banana supply off the planet. Before the 1960s, the varietal of bananas shipped to stores around the world would have tasted different. It would have been sweeter and more flavorful. Then the banana varietal that replaced it was discovered to be more resistant to the fungus, was a little less sweet. It would have tasted very different.
Mhm.
So basically, your grandparents' bananas tasted funny. So I like to imagine that Steve Rogers eats a banana when he first wakes up in the new century and is horrified,
Yes.
and then has to figure out what happened to bananas. And then I like to imagine that once Bucky woke up at some point, he just sort of casually handed him a banana and then laughed when Bucky bit into it and looked at it like it personally offended him.
What
I
is
just
this?
imagine he rolls over and like wakes up in that bed and it's like looks over and is like, oh, at least bananas. Like starts choking on it.
What is
Like,
this?
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
somebody's poisoned.
And then like spends a whole week going up to
Yeah.
the Avengers, like, what happened to bananas? Someone tell me
Yes.
about the bananas.
He's running
He
around.
puts that on his list,
Yes.
Busts
When
out
we
running
find out about
around.
Rocky,
Marvin
Rocky
Gaye.
2, Marvin Gaye, Star
Bananas.
Wars, bananas.
I just see him at the end, like Nick Fury's like, Cap, you missed out things, and like and oblivious to all the big screens and everything. It's
Yes.
runs like a newspaper stand. It's like trying all the bananas. Like, oh!
They all
He bites one, spits it out, just keeps grabbing all of them. You got some random dude that's like staring at him, like, I'm just trying to sell the papers.
Right, yeah.
Oh my goodness. I have to say, now I'm not one to over exaggerate early on, but I think those were the two best fun facts we've ever had.
Ever.
on any
Oh,
movie we've
yeah.
ever done. Ashby is literally talking us out of a job here. Let's move on to social media shout outs, which I will look up because Kyle posts everything, but his phone records us. So Chris Rhodes says he really enjoyed this movie, even though it's not the best Captain America movie because it was about overcoming adversity and sacrificing for the ones you love and the loyalty he had for Peggy. I could only hope for a friendship that Bucky and Cap had, especially through the MCU. His one true love. One true pair.
Relationship.
Yes, goals. The only con was I believe they cut Red Skull out way too soon. He's way too good of a villain, and I simply love Hugo Weaving. Kyle had a little back and forth. Chris had a great question. I know this is a different movie, but I wonder if he told Peggy that he kissed Sharon.
Ugh.
That's awkward.
Ugh.
That's like Luke and Leia awkward.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I was watching, what was that movie or TV show she was on?
Revenge.
Yes. I was watching Revenge at the time. I was like,
Count,
she's going to be in the movie.
The Count of Monte Cristo, circa 2008.
I couldn't.
Yeah, I tried. I really tried.
No. Yeah.
Hey, Peg, I just want to clear this up. How do I say this? I made out with your grandniece that we will probably be seeing in the future.
That's right.
Just a heads up.
That's the other problem.
Yeah.
And I love all the memes where it's like Steve and Peggy sitting down to a nice dinner or something, and then the TV comes on. It's like, John F. Kennedy has just been assassinated.
Yep.
And Peggy's like, oh my God. And Steve goes, that's crazy.
Like, didn't see that coming at all. Cuban Missile Crisis. What? Spoiler alert.
The crazy part, too, is how do you sit aside on that? If you're like Captain America, how do you sit to the side and not?
It's like, hey Peggy, I know that I was supposed to go to dinner with you, but I really need to go to Dallas for something here in 1963.
Because all of a sudden there's a shield that goes flying by and
or like,
stuff
I don't know, Bucky being with Hydra the whole time, or like Peggy being like, oh my God, Howard and Maria Stark have just been killed, and
Steve's like, oh no, I'm gonna get that rascal Bucky.
That's
I mean,
crazy.
don't know what I'm talking about here. Also,
Peggy,
Peggy, I'm still young and you're not.
Nice.
So what happened? You've aged 50 years and I'm still looking.
She can still kick
That's
his
love.
butt,
It's like, look at my chest, touch my chest. Yes.
That's why she didn't recognize him. He didn't have a shirt. He had a
Yeah,
shirt.
he had a shirt on in that
He's
scene.
like, wait, hold on. Baby. Oh, Steve.
Joy. My memory come back.
Wait, are you my husband?
I never forget a chest.
Yes.
I never forget a chest.
Oh.
Not that one.
You're not Daniel Sousa. Oh, anyway, Joy Woods Wright said, oh my, yes, Captain America is my favorite, so I love this movie and can watch it over and over. I like the determination Steve has to serve his country. I like how he overcomes his asthma and ultimately he decides to be an American hero. I think Chris Evans was a good choice for this character. I think he fits the qualifications best. Not as good as David Hasselhoff, but I digress.
Only she said that.
Debatable.
No, she didn't say that.
I was about to say, don't put words in her mouth.
I'm not putting any. Yeah, that's unsanitary. Do we have anything on Instagram?
Sure, we did.
Did we?
Yeah, the guy, the 80s, or the Survivor guy.
Oh, the guy who's really disappointed that we didn't do an episode on Survivor last week.
He still commented. He was excited.
Good for him. Good for
He
him.
said, good episode, or good something.
He said, loved it.
Loved
Double
it.
thumbs up.
Okay.
And then William Wright said, my favorite Marvel movie by far. And you said, definitely a great choice.
Because I agree with William.
Good banter there, Kyle.
Williams, if you
Good
don't know
banter.
William. Williams, how old is he? He's high school now?
13 or 14, yeah. He'll be
yeah.
high school next year, I believe.
He wouldn't ever talk to anybody at church.
Was he even born when this movie came out?
Barely.
Barely.
Barely. When this movie came out, I had just finished teaching his oldest sister. She was in 6th grade when this movie came out, I think. So, yeah.
He wouldn't ever talk to anybody. And all of a sudden, he found that one day he was wearing like a superhero shirt. And I was like, oh, you like that? And next thing you know, that's the only thing we'd ever talk
all-
about. We're just like, every time, it's like, what do you think about it? Have you seen it yet? And the crazy thing is because we're adults and we're like, movie's out, we're going to see it. And he's like, it's been out for 3 months. I think I'm finally going to go get to see it. And it's like,
Can we finally talk about this now?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it's cool, though, because 3 months later, he's like, I was crying in the theater. It's like
Same kid, same.
Yeah.
I mean,
You have a heart.
Yep. All right, final thoughts. Anything we want to add here? This is, we're ending the podcast here. Anything?
I thought we weren't supposed to hit the microphones here.
I'm glad that I was the only one that did that. That makes me feel better. It's not like a new
We
thing.
hit the microphone
Happens all
like
the
20
time.
times,
Okay.
and I only blame Kyle for it.
Okay.
He hates it because if I hit the table, it like rings.
He's
like, it ruins the audio.
It ruins the audio.
Just I just did that and it didn't blip.
Well, it didn't.
You liar!
It didn't blip.
You liar!
All right, friends.
That blipped.
Yeah, I didn't blip it. Big thank you to Rickie Liles, who is just letting the 3 of us sitting in a random room in his house to record this. Tim Hutchinson, who did some research on this. We're very thankful for Ashby coming in and just kicking our butts on this episode. I mean, she brought in fun facts and just better than anything we can do. So you're definitely going to be on the podcast again. We'll talk about
anytime you'd like.
anytime.
Her
There is
people.
an open invitation for anything you want
So
to
here,
talk
folks,
about.
if you don't see Ashby, it's because you didn't want to.
Don't you threaten me with a good time.
That's
Anytime.
right. We hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as we did, and that you're pumped for the rest of this journey into the MCU films.
They call them punk.
Yes, you
If
punk.
you listen, you're a punk. Sorry, continue.
Next month, we are covering the Avengers, and I honestly have no idea what next week's
I love how
episode
you jump
is.
to that. It's like, next month we're doing this.
Next month, we're covering Avengers, and I hope Ashby joins us for that too. Don't know what we're talking about next week because I didn't look at the calendar, and next Thursday I might not be able to record. So,
Oh, yeah? What you doing?
We have our 5th grade virtual graduation that I have to go be at. So.
We can do that here. Set up a
Kyle,
monitor.
do you need a...
I may need a co-host.
You may need to come co-host.
Ashby, do you have any ideas for random topics you would like to talk about on a
What are we
Thursday?
going to talk about Thursday?
You let me know.
I'm free Friday.
Rickie doesn't care.
We should talk about Psych while Eric's gone.
No!
No! I will watch all the Psych from now until then. We'll just like get super pumped.
I am
You know
very
what I could actually
dejected
talk
right now.
about for days is Harry Potter
I can
Yes,
do
Harry Potter's great.
or Teen Wolf. Love some Teen
We can do
Wolf.
some
Movie or
TV.
TV show?
TV show.
Okay, see, I grew up on the movie, but I didn't never watch the show. Is it good?
Does he
Does
does he play basketball in the TV show?
No, he plays lacrosse.
Does he surf on top of a
Because it's
van?
modern, no.
Not
But
saying.
as far as like movies,
Mm-hmm.
that would be fun to talk about. We could do Lost Boys.
That would be good.
Ooh.
That would be a good one.
I'm gonna be missing out so badly, guys.
I could literally talk about anything. Obviously, could talk about anything for.
Eric
Where
comes
are we
back.
at? 4 hours
Yeah.
at this point.
Eric comes back like, "Can I have my laptop back, please? I gotta do some work tomorrow."
What do you? There's 10 hours recording. We've done the next couple months. We're good. Don't worry
We're
about
good. We're good.
it. We decided to take advantage of that. Rickie just went to sleep. We just kept
We
talking.
just kept talking.
Mhm.
Until next time, they can do this all day. Apparently,
Yep.
stay as cool as the other side of the pillow, and we will see you. Well, they might see you next week on the What Show. Bye.